Hey there, lovely people. I'm Sammy, and this is another Writing Tip Tuesday. Today, I want to talk to you about how to write your story. I want to talk to you about the difference between setting up your story as a plot or setting up your story with who your characters are. And this will make a huge difference in your story, and I can tell you side by side why it makes a very big difference in your story. Let's talk a little bit about A Quiet Place. Now, I have to have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for A Quiet Place, even though I just recently saw it for the first time. Like, very, very recently. However, I had many opportunities to see it as I went to the University of Iowa for film. I went to the film school there, and the people who wrote the script for the first A Quiet Place movie were graduates. They actually started working on the story when they were in school. How dope is that? They are the first people credited for writing on the movie, and then John Krasinski is after them because he came in and he said, hey, I want to add a little bit more about family because I am an adult now with a family and I kind of want to address it because you know, family. So he had a little bit of writing on the first movie, and that is really a fantastic example of a character-driven story. The first Quiet Place is driven by who the characters are, what their relationships are to each other, and then what the plot is. All of their choices are determined by their values as people. And the plot just sort of follows what their decisions are because of who they are. You kind of have to let your characters give that oof to push the story forward. Otherwise, it's really bland and you lose some of your suspense. And given that A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place 2 are both supposed to be very suspenseful movies, you really want to keep your audience's value on the characters. So by giving them a very character-driven story, you really get that care. I've said character and care so many times. You really get that influence on your audiences. This is a story that had a lot of time to ruminate, a lot of time to really develop who the characters are and what their values are, who they are individually from each other, what their relationships are, what each of them their strengths and weaknesses are, and they are all perfectly developed. They started writing, I believe, in 2014, and the movie came out in 2018. So that's a minimum of 4 years of active work on making this story what it is. And you really can see that all of these characters are individual in their strengths and their weaknesses, and everything that drives them is something that is genuine and could honestly drive anyone, any person. And each of them are unique in what they are. So like the son is scared of everything, and then the daughter is really trying to be as tough as possible, but she can't be defensive in this world that a monster will come and kill you if you make enough noise when she's deaf and no longer has a hearing aid that can guide her. There's no way for her to do everything that she wants to do safely, and that leads to John Krasinski's character, the father, being protective and not letting her do these things and kind of having this sort of stifling feeling about him because he's just trying to keep everybody safe and he really just cares about his family so much, and it's awesome. You get all of these individual people, and you've got the mother who is a matron and she just really takes charge. There's all of these individual characters, and it really shows the amount of effort that they put into it. Your audience really cares about what happens to them, and that makes the suspense really suspenseful. Even when they're just hanging out and they're in their homes, you get that, what if a monster comes in? If they knock over a lamp and sound happens, it's terrifying. So scary. Now on the other side, there is A Quiet Place 2. On which Beck and Wood, the original screenwriters of A Quiet Place, were just credited as the creative minds behind the characters, and John Krasinski wrote the whole thing himself. Now, there's a lot of problems that I have with this second movie, so we're just going to talk about it in terms of character versus plot because I have to keep myself contained. Otherwise, we will run off on a tangent. So, A Quiet Place 2 is a very plot-driven story, to the point that a lot of the decisions that are made by the characters do not relate to who the characters are at all. All of that magic, beautiful, tension-building, caring about the characters that was established in the first movie is just sort of hoping to be held over onto the second one. There's no effort put into it. So it's a lot of, we need to get these characters from point A to point B, where the first movie would have taken the characters and say, why would the characters go from point A to point B? The second movie just says we need to get them from point A to point B, so they go from point A to point B because we said so, which is not a problem per se, but it's definitely not good. By taking away these characters' individual agencies and really making them like pawns? They make them pawns to the plot. We're gonna leave this place that we have all of our food, and it's a farm. We have plenty of reserves, and we have a whole house available for our safety. But we're gonna leave so we can find this other guy. Why? Because plot. Duh. So all of these driving factors are just plot. That's it. That's all that's giving them their reasoning. It's not, oh, I, as the son who's scared of the monsters to like a terrifying feeling, I am going to leave this safe spot that I have and go explore this place that has a bunch of things that make noise. In what world are you honestly going to believe that? Oh yeah, I, the scaredy cat, am now going to go on an adventure by myself where I could die. No, that's not how a character-driven story would have had that happen. There would have had to have been a reason that he would have to feel like he had to go out there and he really wouldn't want to go and he would try everything in his power to be quiet. And he didn't, because his character that we know well from the first movie died at the end of the first movie. He is now just a robot that looks like that character. We really want to have that character purpose behind the movement, because once I, as an audience member, watch him leave this safe spot for no reason and make a bunch of noise, the suspense of the monster coming has left me. I no longer feel worried that he's gonna die. I don't care. He should die. That's not what you want from your readers or your audience. You want them to care whether or not your characters live or die. Halfway through that movie, probably like a third of the way through that movie, I was like, they're all gonna die. Why do I care anymore? There's so much stuff that hits better when it's driven by characters. When you have a character die, or a character who's very, very close to dying, if you care about who that character is, it's gonna hurt more. You're gonna be more worried for them. You're gonna really want them to survive, and you're gonna have that emotional response. That is what writers want when they're writing for readers. They want them to feel connected. They want them to experience the emotions that their characters are going through, and they want them to worry about their characters in these death-defying or deathly experiences that they go through. And having a story that is driven by the plot exclusively, we need to get from point A to point B. They need to leave their house to meet this other man. From there, they need to hear a signal that there's a safe place. Then the girl needs to leave to go find the safe place. Keep the characters in mind. Keep who they are in mind. How would they go from those places? Why would they go from A to B? What is driving them? What emotional guides are they receiving to go from point A to point B? Why is it happening? Not, this would be fun if A to B happened. Because your audience is gonna stop caring. It's so instantaneous when you see the difference between a plot-driven story and a character-driven story. The second movie is supposed to take place right after the end of the first movie. And to give you a spoiler, somebody dies in the first movie. And at the beginning of the second movie, we have no grief. There is no pain that we see. There's no loss because it's not important to the plot. And if you go from watching A Quiet Place 1 and then you watch A Quiet Place 2 right after, it's such a stark failure of the character development, the characters' emotions, and their experiences of this loss in the world that they're in. They just don't have it. Where even in the first movie, when a different character has died, they mourn that character throughout the whole movie, and we don't get a single minute of it in the second. Try and summarize the reason why I am so upset by the second A Quiet Place movie. Basically, when you have characters that are well developed and that have their own motives for everything that they do, that your readers or viewers know, and they can recognize what drives each character and what their motivations are behind every movement that they've made so far. But you want to tell a fun story that has cannibals or pirates or something? Is that really a good idea to exclude all of your characters? And like, I have no qualms against John Krasinski. He's a very talented director, very talented actor. The movie came together well in terms of visual and audio, everything, all of the stuff that makes a movie, besides the story, was great. It was perfectly fine. It's got amazing reviews, which I didn't understand until I finally saw somebody else make a video about how they felt about it, and it was the same as how I feel about it. It's fine. It's a fine movie. It's okay. I just wish that he had gotten maybe Becken Woods to take a look at the script. I don't know what happened. The only thing I've heard is that he had Emily Blunt read it, which, like, if I were Emily Blunt and my husband was like, remember that movie that you won a BAFTA for? Do you want to read the script that I have written for the second one? I don't know how critical I'd be. Like, if I'm being honest, I don't know. It's really a matter of making sure that when you're writing something, if you have a really amazing plot that you want to tell, like A to B to B to C, how cool would that be? Make sure that your characters are moving that plot too. You can't just give them directions on a map and assume that they're going to follow it directly without having to stop and look out the window for a minute or see what kind of thing is down this other path and then come back to it. Let your characters explore because of who they are individually. Letting your plot really guide your entire story isn't going to give you an emotionally driving force behind it. It's just going to give you, wow, they went on an adventure. A to B, B to C. How crazy. And we don't really want that when we're telling great stories. We want people to remember who the characters were, what their values were, how their individuality really brought them through the story. And if you want to hit certain points, don't give them an assigned time that they're going to happen. These things are going to happen because I want them to. There's got to be another reason. You really have to give enough to keep the momentum going. And your plot, I'm sure it's great. It's not going to do as much of the heavy lifting as your characters are. So if you have spent a lot of time on what you want to happen in your story and not a lot of time with how you want your characters to feel about the things that are happening or how you want your characters to develop based on the things that are happening, take some time and look at who your characters are and really develop who they are and what they are doing and why they are doing what they are doing. The why is such an important thing to be able to tell a good story. That is all I have to say on really A Quiet Place 1 versus A Quiet Place 2, but also characters versus plot in terms of developing your story. So, let me know in the comments if you liked A Quiet Place 2. If you haven't seen it, see the first one, because the first one was good. And if you have any other stories that are great examples of potential in their characters, but really driven by the plot, or stories that start out like they're really driven by the plot and then their characters really come in very strong, or the opposite. Let me know if you have ever noticed a really plot-driven story, and we can have a little book chat in the comments. And then I will see you again on Saturday for another Story Study Saturday. And then I will see you again on Tuesday for another Writing Tip Tuesday. Until next time.